Come on, bitch, let's go. Come on, get ready, bitches. You haven't seen nothing yet. Come on.
Valentino, Versace, Lamborghini, Bugatti. I got money to burn. I'm single and I'm naughty.
Come on.
Tiffany's, Cartier, Gucci, Armani.
Come on.
Break out your black card, boys. It's time to party.
Hi, you guys. Well, as promised, the Patreons wanted me to cover Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, so we're going to be doing it on the Sunday shows in the beginning, and then we'll get into other topics later in the show. And don't forget, all the shows now have time codes, so you can jump around or listen straight through, depending on how much time you have. So we're doing right now Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Season 6, Episode 3, called Dismissed. And I'm, of course, going to give you behind the scenes stuff and, tea that dropped this week accordingly, and some stuff that I just know from interviews I've done and people I know in Salt Lake. Okay, so it's going to be fun. So first and foremost, we're going to start off with the fact that Lisa Barlow is trying to build a really solid case that she is more important than the women in terms of her job and life and career. And this is mainly because she's surrounded by big celebrities, which is really tied to the Sundance Film Festival, which I did for 10 years, maybe longer. No, probably 10 years. And when I say I did, it means that I either took a brand, like for example, I took Naked Juice there one year and distributed their budget amongst a bunch of events and made sure their brand was integrated into the parties and events the way they were supposed to be, and did those deals and signed those contracts and made sure the talent did what they needed to do with that brand. And in other cases, it was sometimes actually raising the money to finance some of the party venues that everybody goes to that aren't just the restaurants that are trying to make a buck off the people throwing events there, because there are pop-ups in Sundance and they need money to function. Even the fanciest ones do. And so I would come in and I would raise money and give it to them. And then in return, they would allow me to throw movie premieres there. And I had quite a few film clients that I did all of their brand integrations and for years. And so I would, tie in those brand integrations into the film, into the launch party for the independent films I did. And, in return for guaranteeing the celebrity talent, I would package the deal. I would bring in the money through the brand, package the talent through the film company. The film company would get a free premiere. The talent would get great VIP treatment. The brand would get exposure tied to the talent in the movie, and I'd take all that money and put it all together and make it work. Sometimes with pop-ups, sometimes with venues that I invented from scratch. It just depended on the film and it depended on the circumstances. Anyway, so I did this for many, many, many years, and I know most of the players in town. I think my last Sundance that I did was in 2011, but I came up with all the people that are, the biggest pop-ups there. We're talking about the Lyft Premier Lounge. Oh my gosh, my friends who ran that. Chef Dance. Oh God, what other ones were there? I'm doing this one off the top of my head. So many. But anyway, I came up with all those guys. And, right when this was like an emerging market. And then also, funny enough, I was really friendly with Jeff Vespa, who owned Wire Image. And he was the first kind of photographer to figure out that if you had a presence in some of these pop-ups that all the talent would be told to go to, that you could get all the pictures from Sundance in a controlled environment, really beautiful, and then traffic them out and make money off trafficking those photos out in that way. Rather than just papping them on the street. And a lot of the film companies preferred that anyway with their talent and publicists. So Jeff went on to make Wire Image huge, and then he sold it. I think he sold it for a ton of money. But I remember Jeff was a photographer. That's where we started. That's how far back I go. Now, this was not the only festival that I did many, many years in a row. I did Toronto. I did Tribeca. I also did the Monaco Grand Prix. I did Cannes Film Festival for as many, if not more years than Sundance. So I'm pretty seasoned at this particular topic. And why I bring it into today's show is that Lisa Barlow is, screaming from the rooftops in this scene that she is got all these actors coming to this big event. And she kind of throws out off the cuff that, it's Vida Tequila's sponsoring the event. But she makes it look like she's running the event itself because it's a regular restaurant. There doesn't appear to be like an event pop-up there. So I just wanted to say, to be clear, that event she was putting together had to have been for the Sundance Film Festival for her to have that level of talent that she had coming. Now, let me explain how it works as a sponsor at Sundance. And trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. Lisa Barlow would say to Sundance official, I want to sponsor Sundance. And they would integrate her tequila in all of the publicity events that are happening that are official related to the Sundance Film Festival. However, that costs a lot of money. And that is not what she did. In fact, it used to be, when I was doing Sundance for many, many years, that Pedroni was always the premier sponsor. But since it has changed to KATSANEVAS'S. So they will not have any other competing tequila in Sundance competing with them in an official capacity. So what some of the alcohol brands do, because frankly, they want to get their alcohol in Sundance and get it in front of the talent as well as promoting it. What some of them do is they will offer to non-official movie premieres and parties and pop-ups their alcohol brand like Vida Tequila, and they'll say, listen, we're going to give you free product for your party in return for you making us like a high-level sponsor at your event. We want to be on the step and repeat, or we want to be in the background featured. We want, at least one photo, whatever the layout is of the land. And the official festival will let them do it because that is not an official event, okay? And a lot of producers do these non-official events because of talent relations or networking reasons or movie sales, all sorts of different things, okay? So they're still really fun events. But this is the level of sponsorship that Lisa Barlow is representing in this scene. She gave someone free alcohol in return for some brand exposure at this party. The party itself would have been thrown by someone like me working for the film company or an event planner or whoever was running the pop-up, although in that scene it didn't appear like there was one. She would not be the event coordinator. So what she was there to do was to set her brand up in the space the way that would make her happy and allow her money to be spent properly. Now, sometimes if your tequila brand isn't that desirable, they'll also charge you to have your tequila there, not just ask you for free product and paid bartenders and fit out. So I would imagine in this case, with the level of celebrity that she put up in the show, she probably just gave free product and maybe someone to staff the bar and possibly a fit out of some sort. She certainly wasn't the event planner. And she overplayed the scene, which is why I wanted to tell you this. Lisa Barlow is acting in that scene as she's walking through that bar, ordering things around. I can tell you 99.9%. That's how sure I am, that scene was completely magnified, that she was really there just to make sure her setup was okay. Also, she would have gotten tickets as a sponsor to this event, and that's probably why she went to network. Now, add to that she's a housewife, and she's been on 6 seasons of Bravo, and from a talent perspective, which is a different outlook of this, she would have wanted to be there too to network with this group of people, So I'm not saying Lisa Barlow wouldn't have gotten invited to this event without being involved with the film, because certainly as a sponsor she would have, and probably even as a reality star she would have, just because it depends on what year of Sundance, but sometimes they really need celebrities, like any celebrity, to do photos, D-level and up. So I wanted to call that out because I noticed that bullshit. Most of these brands and people that were thriving in Sundance Film Festival in Utah and every year had a big presence will now be completely nuked off the festival because they're moving it to Boulder and Robert Redford has died. So now it is under a whole new operation and potentially paradigm because Robert Redford still, even as old as he was, still was very controlling over the festival that he founded. But now it's going to Boulder, and I think it's going to have a whole new way of like functioning and working, and almost all the people that for years were doing Sundance, I don't think are going to participate in the same way in Boulder. So then we find out that Todd, Bronwyn's older husband, has taken in Bronwyn's mother and father with all of his wealth and glory into their estate in Utah that he's rent or bought for her. We're still not sure. And Bronwyn's father's name was David Richard Newport, and he died on June 13, 2025, after the conclusion of shooting this season that Bronwyn did. And he had been in a memory care facility, and he had a rapid health decline because he fell down on June 10th and then died shortly after. Now, Bronwyn expresses in the TV show of this episode that all of the things that her father with dementia seemed to remember, time periods related to bad things to do with her. So a time frame that he recalls, because of course you lose so much of your memory as your brain deteriorates, he really sees Bronwyn as like 18 years old, and he's wondering why she isn't going to college, and he's concerned about her, but can't really pinpoint why. And he keeps mixing up Bronwyn's daughter, who's around 18 years old, as Bronwyn. And Bronwyn realizes that maybe there was some sort of trauma to him, that this is the memories that keep coming back to him in this awful state. Because, of course, this is exactly the time frame that Bronwyn does like everything she's not supposed to. He's active in the Mormon church, and she ends up getting pregnant in college. She doesn't finish her education that she was supposed to get. She ends up having a baby. She ends up having sex in a way they don't approve in the church. You know, she keeps the baby amongst a scandal because father is Mormon, and he may have been lied to by Bronwyn about the baby. If you go off Bronwyn's storyline with her ex-Mormon baby daddy, then you would hear a story of a guy who was Mormon who abandoned her with the baby as a teenager because he couldn't handle the heat because of the Mormon betrayal and all this stuff, and face his parents, and they didn't want anything to do with her because she would have been considered kind of like a slutty, gross girl by the Mormon, community because of this promiscuity that he participated in too. But if you jump to what Lisa Barlow says, Lisa says, no, that's not what the family says. The family said that she lied to them about the baby, either saying the baby didn't make it, I think was even what thrown out there, or saying that baby wasn't his or something, like to make him go away. So either way, this created some sort of trauma for her dad, who's in the memory care facility, that he keeps revisiting this time period in Bronwyn's youth. Simultaneously, we find that Todd is also supporting Bronwyn Newport's mother because she got sick and had a tumor, and she's been moving from San Francisco down to live with them in Utah. But the mother, you can tell, has a little bit of a distaste towards her own daughter. Doesn't mean she doesn't love her, just means she may not always like her or like the things she does.
I took a longer route to maybe get where I was going. And you said that. You said it's been a really long time. You had to really figure out what you wanted to do. You had to really circle the drain 50 times.
So you couldn't have got there without Todd either. You couldn't get there without a dime.
I know. I don't love you saying that.
I know.
That I needed Todd to get me there.
Well, you needed Todd to support you.
Sadly, this is not the first snide comment my mom has made about me. I think I still really need approval from her. I would live for her to adore me and approve of me and be proud of me. But I also wish that I didn't.
I hope you are going to be okay doing this because you're going to go through it with Todd.
My gosh, Missy, that is dark. Oh my cow. Okay, you know what? I take a lot of Todd's old comments from other people. They don't need to be, because the call doesn't need to be coming from inside my own house.
And And you sense from this mother her complete frustration with Bronwyn in that Bronwyn never did anything she was supposed to do in their eyes, or maybe didn't reach her full potential, which frustrated them because of her craziness. And so what you then sense is that the mother just keeps wanting to remind her, you feel like you're a success, but you haven't earned this. You married a wealthy guy out of San Francisco. You let him take care of you. He controls your every move, and all of this stuff that you have is not really yours, earned by you. It's been given to you for being with a much older man. You can say you love him, but he's like your granddad. So there it is. And the mom doesn't say it in so many words, but she certainly gives us the feeling that that's her take. And she's trying to be nice but honest with her daughter. And Bronwyn feels like that is taking away some sort of success from her life that she's achieved by being so wealthy. But again, I saw a lot of people saying, God, that's the worst mom ever. And I understand, the feeling of like, why wasn't she more receptive to like comforting Bronwyn in such a dark moment about her dad? But at the same time, it was an honest moment of a mom who really resented her daughter's maybe lack of judgment a lot of the time. And the fact that, she's chosen this path for herself where she probably envisioned her having a family and running her own business. And who knows what the mom thought. She was going to work in tech or finance in San Francisco. And instead, she does none of it and she marries a rich guy, an old one. So I don't blame the mom for that, because I could see where as a mother with like higher expectations for your daughter, you'd be sad, a little pissed. Now, I have a special friend who has been very invested in the research to do with Bronwyn's criminal charges. And he did up a working theory on some of the research that he did. So let me read you what his theory was after he conducted all the background checking on the sealed documents that I guess are related to Bronwyn's criminal charges, which is going to become a pivotal point very soon, if not this week, on the show. Again, this is a theory, but why I love it is because he went into so much work in the research he did to try to piece it together. So, I reward that kind of work. So here we go. It says, as most people now know, on March 8th, 2021, Bronwyn was charged with 5 counts of felony grand theft, PC 487B3. Theft by an employee, $950, and 1 count of felony identity theft, PC 530.5A, using another's personal info for unlawful purposes like obtaining goods credit. Her employee status matters because it changes the status of limitations for the grand theft felony charges from the traditional 3 years from occurrence to 4 years from discovery. It also is relevant to trying to figure out what she might have been charged for, given some of the circumstantial evidence that's out there, which I'll address. As I found no police records or arrest records associated with this case, I suspect she was probably not physically arrested. The case might have begun with a complaint by her former employer, which initiated a police investigation. This could have allowed pre-arrest intervention. Accordingly, I suspect she might have hired her attorney, Julia Jane, in before charges were filed. This might have made it possible for her to negotiate with the DA's office for something like a courtesy summons for arraignment in lieu of a warrant being executed. This happens with some frequency with white-collar crimes. Bronwyn hired a top criminal defense attorney who was a former prosecutor and specialized specifically in white-collar criminal defense. On last week's Watch What Happens Live appearance, Bronwyn was asked about these prior criminal charges and responded that this was a sealed, dismissed case from 10 plus years ago that she can't super talk about because it's been sealed by the court. That was very helpful to me in trying to piece together what happened. On May 28, 2021, 3 months after Bronwyn was charged, there was a post about, quote, primary caregiver diversion on the Jane's Law Group website. I suspect Julia Jane was already representing Bronwyn at this time. That post explains that caregiver diversion came into effect in January of 2020 due to the changes in California Penal Code 1001.83. It authorizes local governments to create diversion programs for parents, legal guardians to children under 18. I suspect this was the route they went with Bronwyn's charges. An interesting wrinkle is that Bronwyn's daughter had only recently returned to living with her and Todd shortly before the charges were filed. It makes me wonder if Bronwyn did hire Julia Jane prior to being formally charged. How far in advance did that occur? That's like a rhetorical question. 1001.83 might have been invoked directly with those 6 felony charges, or Bronwyn's lawyer might have negotiated with the DA to reduce 6 felony charges, all wobblers, meaning they can be charged as felonies or misdemeanors, to misdemeanor charges. San Francisco's local 1001.83 program approved 6 to 24 months diversion terms, which could have included things like classes, restitution, community service, and counseling. After successful completion of diversion, Bronwyn's lawyer might have filed a motion for dismissal under 1001.83G, which mandates dismissal upon completion. Petitioning for sealing might have followed, as 1001.83H automatically seals records post-dismissal. I suspect that the February 8, 2022 scheduled court appearance for Bronwyn might have been a diversion status hearing. It's interesting to note that Bronwyn posted on her now deleted Insta Q&As about having met her goal of 100 hours of community service in November of 2021, which would fit with this diversion timeline. In Bronwyn's recent interview with Bustle released yesterday, she stated, "I hired an attorney in my past to help me with something, and the women really tried to twist it into something negative, like I was a criminal. It's not what they're making it out to be, but they know I can't speak on it because it was sealed. That feels kind of dark to me." Bronwyn was, I suspect, very deliberate with her words here. If the case was dismissed and sealed via a diversion program, that doesn't mean she didn't commit the crimes for which she was initially charged. It would just mean that in legal terms, she's not a criminal because there's no conviction due to the diversion, if that's indeed what happened. I think it's worth pointing out that San Francisco has a higher standard for initial charging of felonies compared to many other jurisdictions in California. The SFDA requires proof, quote, beyond a reasonable doubt of the suspect's guilt before filing felony charges. Most California DAs use a low probable cause threshold for initial charging. So what might have actually happened that led to those initial charges? There are a few pieces of circumstantial evidence that may help shed some light on things. First, there was Bronwyn's December 3rd, 2020 Insta Q&A, where she was asked about her career in finance. At one point, she states, quote, "I allowed, at the time, unresolved trauma and frustration about certain work situations to excuse some bad choices I made, and now don't look back on my time in that field happily." And then that dots off. "I have had to apologize, make restitution, and forgive myself for not being who I should have always been." End quote. Bronwyn recently deleted all of her Q&As from Instagram after I started pointing out some of these things. There's also an account on Reddit who claimed to have worked at the same firm as Bronwyn and has claimed that she was fired in 2018 in relation to theft. This account has posted about this months prior to my initially discovering these felony charges back in March. Circling back to Bronwyn's comment on Watch What Happens Live about this being, quote, from 10 plus years ago, remember that the felonies she was charged with have a statute of limitations of 4 years from discovery of the crime. I suspect Bronwyn might have made restitution, in quotes, as stated in her Insta Q&A, which was posted months before she was charged, privately whenever she departed her firm. And what I wonder is whether the firm later discovered additional activity from years prior, maybe 10 plus years before now, that she perhaps hadn't disclosed on departure. Again, this is all working theory-based on known facts and circumstantial evidence. Regarding Bronwyn's claim on Watch What Happens Live that she couldn't say much because the case was sealed, sealing does not inherently impose a legal gag order on the defendant. Sealing restricts public agencies from disclosing records, not the individuals from discussing their own experiences. She's free to discuss it unless a specific court order or agreement prohibited her from doing so. Her use of, quote, as far as I can on Watch What Happens Live suggests her restraint was self-imposed rather than because of a gag. After all, she acknowledged the case's existence. A gag would prohibit that. So the big question for you guys to consider, I suppose, in your thoughts is what, was the misappropriation of funds? How did that go down? Obviously wasn't big amounts here we're talking. Anyway, the bottom line, I think, for the fans is they struggle with BRONWYN Newport because she tries to present on the show that she's this wealthy kind of socialite person with Todd, and that, he is super inspirational and admirable, and, she hooked a big fish kind of thing. But the truth, it turns out, is something very different that we're slowly seeing as she's on the show, because her cast members are spilling tea, because her relatives are spilling tea, because she posted a bunch of things on her Instagram and then regretted it later and deleted them. But by the way, I still have them all. What I think is causing this is there's a spirit about Bronwyn that she in some way is better than her cast members. And that makes them want to knock her down a bunch of pegs, to say, listen, lady, you weren't that great a person in your life. You screwed up a lot of things like everybody. You married rich. Let's not pretend you made all this money. You didn't work hard for what you've got. So stop trying to bash the rest of the cast here or make us feel bad about ourselves, because you shouldn't be so proud of you in a way. So, put your facade away. And I believe that this comes from real life, because when Bronwyn was being casted for the show, what I heard behind the scenes that everyone talked shit about her about was that she lied a lot and exaggerated the truth about what she had to kind of compete with everybody in the Mormon kind of richy-ditchy circles. And it irritated a lot of the wealthy people there that maybe don't have skeletons in the closet. Maybe they genuinely earned it or whatever. And they got annoyed by her because they were like, I don't understand why she can't just be normal and not so over the top all the time. And I find it fascinating that the person that she clashes the most with, Lisa Barlow, has the same problem. The social feeling about Bronwyn before she went on TV was rip her down a few pegs. So now you put her on TV and it's like the women are part of these social circles and they have like that eye on her. Pull out all your shit so everybody knows who you really are, and then we'll see if they like you. Now, if you like Bronwyn at the end of all that, then you pass the test. Now, speaking to this, we also find out a little more about Angie Katsanevas' dad on this episode. We find out that he was raised incredibly poor, that he has trauma from the war when the Germans came into his village and destroyed everything, that he had a miserable childhood because of war and being then later displaced as an immigrant. And we really get a sense of how detached Angie K is from the struggle of her father, her ridiculous life to him. Anyway, it's kind of an interesting scene. Then Heather Gay announces she's writing a third book and she's redoing her house now that her kids are gone to be more about her. Now, you guys know that for years I've been telling you that Heather Gay and Lisa Barlow do not get along in real life, really. And that seemed to shift. It seemed to on camera. But there are moments where these cast members show their real feelings about people, and sometimes they mask them. And I'm going to play you a clip from the episode that's going to show you what seems to reflect Heather Gay's real feelings about Lisa Barlow.
We clearly have a friend who is either in financial distress or living a lie or is under attack because these lawsuits.
Part of me has compassion for her, and then part of me is like, she's never going to change. Like, she aggrandizes everything. She brags about everything. She misses a girl's trip to go to be with Ben Affleck, so she's claiming she's going to Ben Affleck's premiere party, and yet she's posting photos like these AI photos of herself in a hotel room I didn't
She
even
said
know
a lot of that to me when we were at lunch. She said that she has a very different life than me. You know, that she has a totally rich, fancy life outside of our circle.
God.
I live a very different life from all of you. Your life is not that different from all of us. It hurt my feelings. I said, our lives are not that different. Like, we're sitting in the same restaurant. We're both wearing thigh-high boots. Like, I thought we had a lot more.
You're very
She
successful.
always does that. She always pulls a level, you know? I really value my friendship with Lisa, and I've worked hard to stay in a good place with Lisa. And part of that is me accepting her how she is and not trying to change or improve her behavior. But she's almost impossible to defend at this point.
She throws her grenades. She diminishes what you've done to confuse you, to distract. For me, I want the truth. And I told her that the other night. Let me in. Let me be your friend. What's really going on?
I know, but I think that Lisa thought you guys had a real friendship, and so that's why she feels like this is a real betrayal.
I do too, though.
I know.
I do too.
Did you hear that? Lisa had a real friendship with you, Angie K, right? Real. Always she's going to say that. Was it everybody fake friendship on here? No, she's talking about behind the scenes, okay? And for the full scoop, join the Dishing Drama Dana Patreon. The link is in this audio description. It's only $6 a month, and you'll get the best information and tea about the things you care about, and even the things you don't know you care about. What are you waiting for?